following video is not made for kids. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello to my subscribers, this is the TFfangeek. I know it's been a while since I did my last review, but I realized that today is January 31st, 2023, and it's the last day where I can do this special video. And the title is no joke. This is a special video celebrating the 20th anniversary of when I started collecting Transformers action figures. Now, I don't remember the exact date. It was earlier than the 31st of January, but I do remember I don't remember the actual day, but I do remember the month, the year, and the time and place where it happened. And I decided to do a special video commemorating the fact that I have been collecting Transformers action figures nonstop for the last 20 years. Most Transformers fans and collectors don't remember the day that they started collecting Transformers action figures. I myself don't remember the exact day, but I do know the month and year. It was January of 2003 when I started collecting Transformers action figures, a hobby that has gone on non-stop for the last 20 years. So I am grateful that I've had the money and that my family's had the patience with me to allow me to continue my Transformers collecting, although in more recent years with finances having to be more tightly held and me having a much more limited budget than I did 20 years ago when I was a kid collecting Transformers action figures, I've had to greatly reduce the amount of collecting I do, but I still do it in just enough amounts that I can get the Transformers action figures that I want to add to my collection. And for the thumbnail of the video, the reason why it's like that is because this video is not just a 20th anniversary of when I started collecting Transformers, even though that's the primary focus. This video technically is my way of celebrating the 20th anniversary of when Transformers Armada was released. Technically, Transformers Armada was released the previous year in 2002, but it didn't really take off that well until the following year in 2003. That's when 2003, when it was in its second year, is when Transformers Armada really started to take off. There's multiple factors for the reasons why. There's multiple reasons why Transformers Armada didn't take off until its second year. I won't go into them too much, but I remember it was January of 2003. It was around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was a noon, and it was a foggy day, and actually I think it might have been a rainy day, but my family and I went on a shopping trip to Kmart, of all stores. Kmart, I believe Kmart.com still exists as a website, but I believe the last brick-and-mortar Kmart store, or if there's any that are still open, I'm unaware of that, but I believe the last ones closed. Kmart as a chain, a brick-and-mortar department store, closed its doors and went out of business back in 2018. I had a Kmart store for my whole life until it closed its door, or as I believe it opened, my local Kmart store opened up in the early 1980s, and then it went out of business in 2018 after about 35 years, I want to say. I could be wrong. It could have been in the late 80s, right before I was born, that it opened, but regardless, it was January of 2003. I walked into Kmart, and I saw on the shelf a Transformers action figure that I knew I wanted to add. It was the very first. It was the one that started my hobby of collecting Transformers action figures, and it was this figure. This is the Transformers Armada Deluxe Class Optimus Prime action figure, and here on top of his roof is his Minicon partner Overrun. Now, there's so much I want to say, and my mind is racing trying to organize my thoughts, so if I pause for moments of silence, it's because I'm trying to gather myself. But the reason why I started collecting Transformers action figures in the first place, I did this on a couple of videos in the past, but I'll reiterate it here for this video. But when I was a kid, I lost a relative who was very close to me. It was my grandpa, in fact. I lost him to cancer in 2001, and I fell into a deep, deep depression knowing that he was gone and I wasn't gonna see him alive anymore, and I was in such a deep depression I had suicidal thoughts, but thankfully my family knew I needed help. They sent me to therapy, and for anyone who disses psychiatry, shame on you, because it really works. Psychiatry doesn't exist to prove that sane people are insane. Psychiatry exists to explain why depressed people are not feeling happy, and happy, and it's there to make them feel happy again. So from my own experiences, I can attest to the legitimacy of psychiatry. But bringing focus back here to the Transformers franchise, one thing that happened to me in therapy was I was told to try and find new ways to find a new outlook on life to make me happier. And one day when I was flipping through the TV channels, and I saw a cartoon that I had never seen before, and I saw a red and blue robot transform into a semi-truck, and I thought how cool that was. And that was, of course, the Transformers Armada version of Optimus Prime. And I slowly, after finding out the name of the show and the franchise, I got into Transformers Armada big. It was one of the things that helped get me out of my depression, and it brought a sense of happiness that I hadn't had before. I was experienced to the world of the Transformers, and when I found out toy action figures of them and were made on a regular basis, when my family went to Kmart and I saw Optimus Prime there on the shelf, I decided to buy it. And I've been buying Transformers action figures non-stop since then for the last 20 years. So, for the Transformers Armada Deluxe Class Optimus Prime figure itself, this figure was made at a time when figures like it were a rarity. What in the world am I talking about, you're asking? Well, when I say Transformers figures like it, what I mean is this figure right here, the deluxe class-sized version of Armada Optimus Prime, the main reason this figure was created was for the purpose of having a deluxe class-sized Optimus Prime action figure. This was not the quote-unquote official regular-sized Armada Optimus Prime action figure. That title belongs to the first, I think at the time it was the Armada Optimus Prime action figure, the large one that comes with the trailer that transforms from that also connects with the tractor cab to form a super robot. That version of Armada Optimus Prime is a size class of Transformer that Hasbro hasn't used in years. It's a now defunct size class that was known as a Supreme class back when it was released, and that was the official standard-sized Optimus Prime action figure, and I believe it was either in Wave 3 or Wave 4 of the Transformers Armada line that the Deluxe Class Optimus Prime figure was released, and the reason why this figure was created, if I said it a moment ago, I apologize for repeating myself, but this was created just for the sake of having a smaller Deluxe Class size Optimus Prime action figure for Transformers fans and collectors who missed out on the regular Supreme Class size Optimus Prime, or if they couldn't afford it, they could at least get this, and have at least one action figure of Armada Optimus Prime in their Transformers collections. And earlier, a moment ago, when I said figures like it, in more recent years, it has become much more common for action figures of Transformers characters that are smaller in size to be created for the purpose of being smaller in size. But way back in 2002 and 2003, when this version of Optimus Prime was released, the idea of releasing smaller-sized action figures of certain Transformers characters just for the sake of purposely having a smaller-sized action figure of those characters, back in the early 2000s, Hasbro and Takara weren't really focusing on that too much, and so, in my opinion, this is one of the first Transformers action figures that started the trend of having smaller-sized action figures of Transformers characters for the purpose of having smaller-sized action figures. Today, in modern times, with the War of Cybertron Trilogy lines and the Legacy lines, and with Core Class-sized Transformers action figures such as Core Class Optimus Prime, it's now much more common practice, but it was a rarity back in the early 2000s, so that's what makes the Deluxe Class version of Armada Optimus Prime somewhat special. Now, one thing I will note is that there are two different variations of the Armada Deluxe Class Optimus Prime action figure. The first version which I had for several years along with this version, the first version that was released, and this is the only difference between this variant of a Deluxe Class Armada Optimus Prime and the other version, is that this version of Optimus Prime does not have an Autobot logo on the top of the hood of his vehicle mode. It ends up on his back in robot mode, and the other version of Deluxe Class Armada Optimus Prime, that was the other variation, does have an Autobot logo here on the hood. I remember from owning the version that did have the Autobot logo that the Autobot logo, it wasn't painted onto the surface, or it wasn't sculpted onto the surface of Armada Optimus Prime, which was common practice during the throughout most of the Transformers Armada action figures. In a rarity, the Deluxe Class Armada Optimus Prime action figure, his Autobot logo was a sticker that was pasted to the surface of him, and the reason why I no longer have that version is because one day I accidentally etched that Autobot logo clear across us and destroyed it, so I got rid of that version because I couldn't bear the sight of having that Autobot logo scratched off, just like Armada Wheeljack's scratched off Autobot logo. So I got this version at the same time. And even though it does not have the Autobot logo, I'm still grateful to have this in my collection. Another reason why I got the version of Optimus Prime that had the Autobot sticker on it is because on that figure, one of Optimus Prime's gimmicks is that his smokestacks for his semi-truck mode, they are, this one's a little bit of a struggle, but a gimmick with these smokestacks is that they are removable, and it's actually a call out to the larger Optimus Prime Armada figure where you can remove his smokestacks and turn them into a small laser gun that Optimus Prime can use in his robot mode. You can't really use these as laser guns here on the Deluxe Class Armada Optimus Prime because they have, I believe this is a 3 or 4 millimeter port on the base of them. They attach here to Optimus Prime's wrists, and these are really the only ports on Optimus Prime that the smokestacks can attach to, so unfortunately the gimmick of them being removable, it's useless, it's redundant, and it's a gimmick that I honestly think that this figure could have done without. I think one of the main reasons they did it was for safety reasons, so if you wanted to, you could rotate the smokestacks around. You can't really do it with how they're sculpted, and also the sculpting of Optimus Prime's robot mode arms. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I have this version over that stickered version, is because I lost one of the smokestacks on that figure, and I was never able to find it again. And one thing I do want to note is that technically this is not the very first Transformers action figure I ever owned. That title actually belongs to the Transformers Generation 2 Hero Optimus Prime action figure, which I reviewed on my channel several years ago. And I also had one in my collection, one of the Transformers Generation 1 Micromasters, Generation 1 Road Handler. I have those two figures in my collection, but when I had those two figures as a little kid, I didn't really know who the Transformers were. I was unfamiliar with the Transformers franchise, and when I was a little kid, I wasn't into robots. I was more into transportation vehicles, so that's one of the reasons why my Generation 2 Hero Optimus Prime figure is in such pristine condition, is because I hardly ever transformed it into robot mode. I kept it as a toy truck. So, by all accounts, even though this technically is the third Transformers action figure that I ever owned, this was the figure that actually started my hobby of collecting Transformers action figures. It's kind of like the way history now remembers that technically the Vikings were the first Europeans who set foot here in America, but the actual colonization of Europe in America started with Christopher Columbus's voyage in 1492. That may be a nasty comparison, but it's the best one I could think of right off the bat. But yeah, overall, I do enjoy the design of this. Compared to how more modern Transformers action figures have been designed. With the Armada line, one thing that Hasbro and Takara focused on was having details of the figure actually sculpted details being actually sculpted on the figure, and having paint decos replaced. The mentality that Hasbro and Takara had in the early 2000s was stickers being used to highlight details on Transformers action figures was Generation 1. It was a thing of the past, and so basically Hasbro and Takara have gone full circle in more recent years in actually using stickers again to highlight details on Transformers action figures. And that's one of the things that has made the Transformers action figures released in the Armada line unique and distinguished from other lines of Transformers action figures that came before and have come more recently after these figures did, is that these action figures rely on paint and actual sculpted detailing to highlight details of them. I mean, just looking at the front of Armada Deluxe Class Optimus Prime, You got the grill section. It's actually done in light gray plastic, but then it's painted black on the front to highlight age detailing, like it's been worn out from years of traveling on the road. Optimus Prime traveling on the road and having dirt staining up his grill. Stain. You got the outside of the front bumper painted silver. You got the headlights painted yellow. You've got the floodlights on the roof painted yellow as well. For the robot mode arms, you got gold detailing in the middle where the silver gray smokestacks come up. And even though these parts are blatantly supposed to be blatantly Optimus Prime's robot mode arms, you can even tell that if you are unfamiliar with how the figure transforms. Arms, they do a nice job of helping this figure be a robot in disguise, considering the style of the Transformers Armada action figures that Hasbro and Takara Tomy were going with. In terms of the Transformers Armada action figures being robots in disguise, they fail at that miserably, and Armada Deluxe Class Optimus Prime is no exception to that. With the Minicon port here on his roof and the slot behind it for his Minicon gimmick, which you can't use it in vehicle mode, you do it in robot mode, and it's a stupid gimmick. It's one of the lamer Minicon gimmicks of the Armada line. I'll go through it right now. Basically, in robot mode, you attach Optimus Prime's Minicon partner Overrun to it, and then when you slide him, the Minicon port up and down Armada Deluxe Class Optimus Prime, he has this automated punching gimmick, and I've never been a fan of that in all the time that I've owned this figure, and I think it's one of the worst Minicon gimmicks of all the Armada action figures. But yeah, one of the reasons why these figures aren't really robots in disguise and why they fail at it is because not only of the Minicon gimmicks, but the designers at Hasbro and Takara Tomy, what they wanted to do with the Transformers Armada action figures was, it's hard for me to explain this, but they basically wanted these figures to have almost like the design of them, the vehicle modes at least. They wanted the Transformers Armada characters to look almost like vehicles from the Mad Max franchise. But, at the same time, rather than looking rusty, disheveled, dirty, and looking like vehicles you'd find after the apocalypse, they wanted the figures to have nice, clean-cut paint jobs, and so it's almost like someone designed paint jobs, and that's why a lot of the Transformers Armada action figures, if you look at photos of them, why they have big guns, why they have large missiles, and why they look like they're decked out, armored up, and constantly ready for battle and for warfare. Basically, the design aesthetic Hasbro and Takara Tomy were going for with the Armada action figures was that they are clean-cut and freshly painted Mad Max vehicles. It's almost like pre-apocalypse Mad Max vehicles is what is the design aesthetic for the Transformers Armada action figures. After I found out that's why the Transformers Armada action figures, why their vehicle modes look like the way they do, all armored up with extra guns and extra weapons, I laughed and I found that very silly to find that out. But yeah, Optimus Prime, he does roll really well, and one nice thing is that all of his wheels, they do spin, and this is another feature that makes the Transformers Armada action figures distinguished. Looking at Optimus Prime from the bottom, you know what you're not seeing? That's right, you're not seeing any hollowed gaps on the figure. That's not entirely true. There are some hollowed parts here, like on the bottom of Optimus Prime's feet, but if you look here, those are all tiny spaces. Those are tiny pockets. On more modern Transformers action figures, the entire bottom of the foot has been hollowed out. Now, I'll show off Armada Optimus Prime's lack of hollowed parts when we get to his robot mode, but in vehicle mode, there's no hollow gaps there. And I'll kind of show off the first step in transforming Armada Optimus Prime is you pull the grill down, and then you fold it down like this, and right there, that sculpted detailing in there, it's supposed to be the Autobot Matrix of Leadership. That's what it is in the Armada cartoon, and that's what it is on the larger Optimus Prime action figure, but it's been removed, and the Matrix detailing has been removed in favor of having a bunch of circuitry there. It's not really highlighted due to the fact that there's just blue paint with a gold frame around the middle of Optimus Prime's chest. But one thing I do want to share with you is right here. There is sculpting reversing the grill section from the front of the vehicle mode, and that was something you would not see on Transformers figures today. You would not see sculpted detailing on the inside of a panel just for the sake of having it look like something. It would either be flattened out or be hollowed out, and so that is really impressive to see that. And another thing, just notice that you look right here, there's rigid lines here on the part that the grill clips into to show that you still got the intake vents here for Optimus Prime's vehicle mode there, and that's something I've always enjoyed seeing, is that the sculpt detailing continues to the inside. You even got some headlights here forming what becomes the top of Optimus Prime's shoulders. But one thing I wanted to share with you guys is that on a more modern day Transformers action figure, like other modern deluxe figures, Optimus Prime's head does end up on the bottom of his vehicle mode, but unlike modern deluxe figures, the designers at the time, back in 2002 when this figure was designed in the first place, they invented a way that Optimus Prime's head could be hidden, so even though the vehicle itself fails to make Optimus Prime a robot in disguise, it does a far better job than most modern Transformers action figures do. The wheels aren't hollowed out at all. The wheels are held in place by metal pins, but it does roll fairly well on a flat surface. In more recent years, as dust has collected inside there, when I actually spin Optimus Prime around, and the wheels do squeak. I believe they did squeak when I first bought this figure back in 2003, but it's not as loud as it is right now. And yeah, I believe it's this wheel here on the back that's the big squeaker, these two wheels here on this back section. But one nice thing is that all the wheels do spin. They are all on ground level, and they are designed to look alike. I believe the wheels that at the front that end up on Optimus Prime's shoulders, they are slightly bulkier than the wheels on the back of him that end up on his robot mode legs. But yeah, that's nice to see that all the wheels match up. In more recent years, not just Transformers, but for semi-trucks in general, wheels aren't really designed like this these days, so that's a really nice callback there. Aaron, so for the Minicon gimmick, you got two Minicon ports. You got the one here on the roof, which forms the lame punch action gimmick in robot mode. You got another Minicon gimmick here that ends up on the back, so if you wanted to plug a Minicon onto the back of Optimus Prime, you could do that. And then you've got a 5mm peg here on the back, which is the trailer hitch. Unfortunately, there has never been a trailer designed to go with this Armada Deluxe Class Optimus Prime action figure. I was hoping that in more recent years, maybe a third-party figure might release a trailer that can interact with this Armada Optimus Prime action figure, but that's never happened. And there's also a 5mm port right there on the side, and it's for the purpose of attaching Minicons with 5mm ports, such as Optimus Prime's Minicon partner Overrun. And so basically what you do is you take Overrun, you attach him here on the back, and then you're supposed to use your imagination and have the nose cone of Overrun's jet mode double as the barrel of a laser gun type weapon. And if you look on the underside of Overrun's nose cone, it's sculpted to look like a machine gun, so you just attach it like that, and now Optimus Prime has a rotating gun on the back corner of his vehicle mode. Pew 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 pew. So yeah, that's again, that's you have to use your imagination for that. And so there is as much imagination as there is actual gimmicks to be found on this action figure. So in my opinion, I do not regret at adding this Optimus Prime figure to my collection, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So because of the Minicon gimmicks, aesthetically, the Transformers Armada action figures, they are on par with Transformers action figures from the Generation 2 line rather than Beast Wars. And this is a phenomenon that Hasbro repeated in more recent years time and again, where when a new line of Transformers action figures comes out, they simplify the transformations to get younger collectors to buy these Transformers action figures and not just rely on adults who have been collecting the figures for several years to buy them. That's also become a more commonplace in more recent years, is having new lines of Transformers action figures having simpler transformations. And when the Transformers Armada line was launched in 2002, and in 2000, as it continued into 2003, simplified transformations, a lot of Transformers collectors complained that it was a step back to the Generation 2 franchise compared to the more articulated action figures that were released in Beast Wars, Beast Machines, and Car Robots. robots. But again, a lot of the trends that are found in modern day lines of Transformers action figures, those trends started with the Transformers Armada line, is what I've been alluding to. So to transform Optimus Prime, technically there's, and this is one thing I like with some of the Transformers Armada action figures. Some of the Armada action figures are designed so that you do have to use the Minicon to do a first step, kind of similar to the Transformers Generation 1 Power Masters, where you have to insert the Power Master engine block to start the transformation. But here on Armada Optimus Prime, because he doesn't really need Overrun to activate his transformation, you have different options of what the first step in his transformation can be. You can have the first step be to unplug and lower the front grille. The other first step you can do is stand Optimus Prime vertically and then rotate his robot mode feet down here at the bottom. It's all personal preference. But the next thing you do is you take the grille, bring it, and you fold it down, and then it somewhat accordions like that. And there is Optimus Prime's chest. You got his robot mode. Next thing you do is you unpeg the arms. These pegs did peg in place into these holes more securely when I first got the figure in 2003, but with time and age, they aren't plugging in as effectively as they used to, so that is a bit disappointing to see. Next thing you do is, and this is the hardest step in Optimus Prime's transformation, I don't care what collectors say, this is the hardest step in transforming this figure. You have to extend the legs out, and they extend out that far. You know you've extended them successfully if you have a gap this big between the hip flaps and the top of Optimus Prime's knees. Those joints are super thick, they're super tight, but they have to be because they prevent the legs from collapsing as this figure ages and gets older. And Optimus Prime is still able to stand up successfully with his legs extended, although I helped that out a bit by not transforming this figure too much, and that's another reason why I got rid of the other Autobot stickered version of Deluxe Optimus Prime, is because the legs gave out from being transformed too often. But yeah, there's the legs, and you essentially got you've got Optimus Prime almost transformed. The only step is transforming his arms. So the next thing you do is you want to rotate this part down like this, and then rotate it at the outside of the shoulder, like so. Some of the joints have tightened with age, so it is a bit disappointing to see that, but yeah, there you go. And then you rotate the smokestack around 180 degrees, and then you slide this part on the back on the lower arm, and to slide it all the way back successfully, you will hear it click into place. Unfortunately, sliding it all the way back like you're officially supposed to do, it takes away the 90-degree bend of Optimus Prime's elbows. So you're left with having two choices when you pose Optimus Prime's arms. You can have the shoulders sit vertically along parallel with his torso, or if you want to, you could have the arms parallel with the ground and rotate the shoulder like this. This is how I display Armada Optimus Prime on the shelf, with his arm in the position where his hands are facing forward. Forward. So again, and do the same with the other arm. Make sure everything is straightened out. And here we have Armada Deluxe Class Optimus Prime transformed into his robot mode. Again, the transformation is on par with Generation 2 Transformers, in which it's simple enough that I felt comfortable showing it off here on camera. And there's a nice head sculpt there on Optimus Prime. And unfortunately, the figure does not have light-piped eyes because the back of the head is screwed on in place since the neck joint is a ball joint. Right, but it does allow for a lot of range and articulation with Optimus Prime's head. He can spin around. There's just barely enough clearance with the back of his back armor where you can spin the head around 180 degrees clockwise and counterclockwise. You can look down to his chest that far. He can look up to the sky that far. And there were some scenes in the Transformers Armada cartoon where Optimus Prime was looking that far around, so that's a nice feature. The larger Optimus Prime action figure does not have that head articulation on it. The arms can spin clockwise and counterclockwise at the shoulder, 360 degrees. The arms can go outward this far, but it looks a little awkward since it's actually attached at the top of the shoulder. You got you got ball jointed elbows, which doubles as the bottom of the bicep swivel. The elbows can go technically in and out. You can bend them around that far. No wrist articulation, but he does make up for that by having waist articulation. So Optimus Prime can spin at his waist around 360 degrees. The legs unfortunately can only go forward this far due to the square shape of the hip joint hitting the top of Optimus Prime's pelvis. So the leg articulation is very limited. If you move Optimus Prime's butt flap out of the way, the legs can go back this far. The legs do bend at the knee by 90 degrees, but it's on a very tight ratchet joint, so be careful with utilizing it. The toes can go down like 1 millimeter, and then they can go up this far, but that's primarily due to transformation. And then the toes are on ankle rockers, but again, it's very limited due to the space or lack thereof that the feet can and have. But if you can successfully get them you can see it's right there on that foot. You can get this figure into a sprawl-legged pose if you desire. So, yeah, for the design of the figure itself, from the limitations that the designers were working with, it does have a fairly decent amount of articulation. But again, it's on par with Generation 2 Transformers, not more modern-day Transformers action figures. And then plugging Overrun onto the back, you can, this is one thing I like about how this figure is designed, you can grab onto these parts here on Optimus Prime's roof, and then you can put your thumb on the Minicon peg down here if you need to, and then the way the Minicon gimmick works is that you push Overrun up and down, and I don't know how well it's showing up on my camera, but yeah, Optimus Prime has almost like a punching bag, or almost like a punching gimmick with his arms. It's not the best gimmick. It's, in my opinion, one of the lamest gimmicks to come out of the Armada line, but for what it is, it does do a successful job of being an entertaining gimmick. And then, bringing focus now to Optimus Prime's Minicon partner, Overrun. Overrun was one of several Minicons released in the Armada line where he did not actually appear in the Transformers Armada cartoon. One of the reasons Overrun didn't appear again is because he came packaged with Armada Deluxe Class Optimus Prime. But in the Transformers comic books that were being printed at the time, in 2003, which were being done by Dreamwave, backstory was done where Overrun came from an alternate universe, and he came to warn the Minicons and the Autobots about Unicron and the perils that they might face in their universe as well. So Overrun has become one of the more sought-after Minicons due to that appearance of him in the Dreamwave comic books. But to transform Overrun from his vehicle mode of a jet to robot mode, if you haven't done it already, fold up the landing gear and then unpeg the arms here on the bottom and then rotate them at the shoulder joint. They are clipped on with open clips, so be careful that you don't pop them off. Rotate them 180 degrees and then rotate the arms forward and then fold down the, as I drop Overrun on the floor, or fold down the nose cone of the jet, and then you split the back of the jet in half, and be very careful because a lot of the silver plastic used here on Overrun, it is clear, transparent plastic. It's not crystal clear, translucent plastic, but it is not solid either. So just be careful with that. And then unpeg separate the legs at the knee. There's the clip that held them together in jet mode. And here is Overrun in his robot mode. There is technically one last transformation on Overrun, where you rotate his wings back on his legs and hide them in his robot mode. And I apologize, I'm holding him on top of his head. I'm holding him by the tail fin here so you can see him fully in robot mode. The first copy of Overrun that came with the other Deluxe Armada Prime figure that I had to get rid of, transforming the wings by folding them back and forward too much, it made them flop down. And so in this copy of Overrun, I don't transform his wings, I leave them out there on the side. It does look goofy, Goofy leaving his wings folded out, but because the hinge joint that they're attached to, I know from personal experience that it wears out terribly. It's worth having a goofy-looking robot mode, and having to not have floppy wings going all over the place. But yeah, there's Overrun in his robot mode. He does look pretty decent, and then for a mini-con from the Armada line, and then the transform Overrun into his final mode, bring him back together into his jet, and then you take the tail fin, rotate it around, and there's a 5 millimeter port that flips out. And I showed this off earlier. The bottom of his nose cone, it has the detailing of a machine gun, and so you plug this in, and then again you'd normally fold the wings up here, but there's Overrun. He transforms into Armada Deluxe Class Optimus Prime's laser gun, and even if you did fold the wings up like you're officially supposed to, there's no getting over the fact that this is just an upside down jet acting as a laser gun. But to be honest, because Overrun was the first ever Minicon figure that I owned, he does have a special place in my heart for being the first ever Minicon added to my Transformers collection, so I do wholeheartedly enjoy having Overrun around. Now today, Transformers fans and collectors who were introduced to the Transformers franchise with Transformers Armada like I was, as Transformers fans such as myself who were introduced with Armada, we have a bias where Armada is one of our all-time favorite Transformers series. At least I am. I'll stop myself right there and not speak out for other Transformers fans and collectors. But I will say this: even though Armada has been criticized in more recent years for its flaws, as everything that it did to be a success, I think was done fantastically, and I do wholeheartedly enjoy Transformers Armada. I have most of the Transformers Armada action figures in my Transformers collection now. Ones that I missed out when it was in full swing in the early 2000s, I've managed to add to my collection in more recent years thanks to Amazon websites such as Amazon and eBay offering the Transformers Armada action figures. There's a place for people wanting to sell them off to other collectors who missed out on them. So I'm really thrilled for that. But thank you guys all so much. This video's gone on a lot longer than I wanted it to. But this has been my special video celebrating my 20th anniversary of collecting Transformers action figures non-stop, and it's also a shout out to the 20th anniversary for Transformers Armada. And this is basically the figure that started my Transformers collecting, the Armada Deluxe Class Optimus Prime action figure with Minicon partner Overrun. So for the proverbial question in which I end off my normal reviews of Transformers action figures, do I recommend getting the Armada Deluxe Class Optimus Prime with Minicon partner Overrun figure and adding it to your Transformers collection? I do if you're a fan of Optimus Prime, and if you're a fan of Minicons, and if you're a fan of Transformers action figures that transform into tiny jets, then this is a decent Optimus Prime figure to get. But if you aren't really into bulky deluxe class-sized Optimus Prime action figures, then this figure can be an easy pass, as especially considering the fact that it was released back in 2002 and 2003. But if you're a fan of Transformers Armada, I do recommend you get this figure. If not for Optimus Prime, then get it just to get Overrun and have Overrun in your Transformers collection, because he is a pretty fantastic Minicon to have. So thank you guys all so much, and this has been my special video of celebrating 20 years of collecting Transformers action figures. And thank you to all of my subscribers for your continued support. I looked this morning and noticed that I'm only a few subscribers away from being at 600 subs. So thank you guys all so much. And I promise the reviews that I have promised I will do, they are coming. I have a list of all the Transformers action figures that I have to make video reviews of. The main struggle I've been facing is how to organize which Transformers action figures to review next, the order in which I should review them, because there's a lot of size comparisons that I like to do with Transformers action figures in my reviews, and it's difficult for me on my own to get all those action figures for the size comparisons together. So please bear in mind with me. I promise the reviews are coming. And thank you guys all so much. And thank you, Hasbro, for making the Transformers a successful franchise to the present day. Hey, and until next time, you guys, stay safe, stay healthy. And until next time, you guys, transform and roll out. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.